All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the Magento Association Podcast. We have Sergej on from Amasty, and welcome, Sergej.
Thank you. Nice to be here with you.
You are the CEO of Amasty, one of the leaders in the Magento community extensions, development, and support, etc. Why don't you give us a little insight in who you are for those that you don't know you and how you came to be at Amasty?
Yeah, so long story short, I'm German born in Belarus and raised there. So I started my career in outsourcing. I spent more than 10 years in some kind of European outsourcing company named IBA and worked like for IBM Goodyear projects. Then I decided to try something different. I started my startup career with founders of Viber, like known messenger. We were creating Uber rival in New York called Juno. It was later acquired by Get. Then it was almost, let's say, agreed to be acquired by Lyft. And I decided to try something different. And this is where Amasty story begins for me. So it's like Amasty was already by that time 10 years old. Now we're going to celebrate 17th birthday. So it's almost my 7th year in Amasty. And yeah, like I'm professional manager, certified project manager and EMBA graduate. So my idea behind Amasty was to make sure it's managed properly according to, let's say, well-known established standards, and becomes not like a small startup, but well-established business.
Yeah. So that leads me into my second question. So obviously, as you said, Amasty had been around for 10 years before you came in, already had an established culture, I'm assuming, and ways of working. And did that present any challenges to you? And what were some of your kind of main goals over the last 6 years to realign or, make changes or keep things the same? What was how's it been for the last 6 years working there?
I believe that the main challenge when I entered the company was how to make sure that company, let's say, remain this vibe of startup while it's growing and more people are coming, and like founder or I don't know regular manager is not able to rename all people, recognize like all of them by face and so on. So the main challenge, how to make sure like from the small team where everybody breathes the same air and like share the same values, you can move forward and make sure that, let's say, values are still in place and they are not vanished like with all these, let's say, growth thing. And it was the crazy period when I just joined, because like company that year growth double. And during my onboarding, we grew even more. And then COVID started. And by that time, like company almost was in Belarus. There was just a small team in Slovakia. And like it was an election year in Belarus. After this year, we had to relocate a lot of people to Ukraine, and try to open the office in Odessa. We established the office in Cyprus. And then war started.
Oh, man.
So there were like not one challenge to solve, and not just about culture, but like we had to, let's say, re-envision how the company should be structured, where it should be located, what offices should we have, and how to make sure that our clients do not feel impacted by all these geopolitical issues that were happening these days and that days as well.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. That's a lot to take on.
Yeah, like it's a great experience, but let's say, I'm not sure I would accept this offer knowing about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. That's great though. You're still with it too, which is impressive. So, given your background, you did some apps. You worked for some big enterprises. You did some outsourcing. Now you're in this crazy world of open source software. Did it take some time for you to kind of understand the community and the mission and kind of get the whole vibe of open source and the value, or did you kind of understand that going in?
Yeah, I know. I believe it was the hardest bite to chew for me, because when I came to the company, the one thing is, let's say, to establish proper processes. Like, to be honest, Amasty had pretty nice team already on board. There are a lot of it's a long-term and pretty sophisticated developers there. Nice professional marketing team, support team, everything was fine. But like, probably it was more about alignment, making sure we understand our place in the ecosystem, and understanding like how to switch from this startup rival period when you need to be bigger, better, with a better variety of services, to more trusted, quality known. And it took us several years to make sure that we are not focused anymore in, let's say, capturing the market, but we are making sure that, let's say, it's an easy journey for our clients, making sure that you can trust our products. It's not about feature reach, it's about established quality and just like specific standards, like regardless, are you talking with marketing team, with support, or just checking the website demo, like you know what to expect.
Yeah.
So it was a huge period of transformation from this perspective. But like for me personally, let's imagine like that, let's say, Uber-based applications, it's a heavy load, I would say SaaS businesses, right? So there is some kind of the mobile client, but basically all system are microservice-based systems. And now you realize that everything what you distribute to the people, you're not able even to understand how they're using it. You're just pushing the piece of the code and wait for the feedback. There is no analytics. It can be like 10 different, like 100 different variations of your code in different instances with different kind of configuration and other, let's say, complexity based on like custom code, different combination of other vendors' extensions. And you need to understand like what is the real impact of your code, what is the impact of, let's say, custom instance, right? Or combination of different extensions of your company and different companies.
Yeah.
And what community expects you to be. So I'm not sure if you heard about it. One of the projects, my first projects was initiated with a community, was with help of William from Hyvä and Kalen Jordan.
Okay.
It was a discussion about why Amasty decided to launch Jet Team. And then people were saying like, okay, probably not the best product. And Hyvä is way better. Hyvä just appeared that days. And there was Robert Rand who said like, guys, like we partnered with them. Like it was a nice opportunity that days. And we tried to create SaaS business from Magento open source powered by Amasty extensions, Amasty team. Like Hyvä just appeared like 7 months, maybe even not yet. And it was a nice opportunity. And it was a huge discussion saying like, okay, what about performance? What about quality? And then Kalen approached me saying like, do you have anything to say about it? And we established Amnesty for Amasty project in a MailChat community where I collected all possible claims where people were not satisfied with anything. It was a public board Trello board where we collected all feedback and responded on it.
Mm-hmm.
And year after it, I was able to say, okay, guys, we just closed the last card with some kind of claims in terms like what you don't like in Amasty.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it was very nice deep dive into community life.
That's great. I mean, that's what I love about the open source community, frankly, is it like you have lots of instances, lots of feedback, and you can actually, instead of the top down deciding what the software is, the whole community, it's like bottom up decides what it is. And then you finally come to, maybe not one solution, but a lot of different options.
Yeah, it could be different, let's say, approaches here. Like different people are looking for different solutions. But normally, let's be honest, Magento, it's about developers, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless if it's a merchant or it's an agency, like it requires development skills.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are providing the products for Magento, it means that you're providing you are selling the products to developers, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it's the most sophisticated customer-based solution, developers should like it, or at least should be comfortable using it.
Right.
So we're focused a lot from, let's say, making sure it's feature-rich to making sure developers still can use it, also comfortable using it, upgrading it, and so on.
Yeah. I think that's where Hyvä was successful. Because the developers love it. Yeah. And you get the developers to buy in, then all of a sudden it starts to get implemented. And now the customers are happy. They might not even know that this Hyvä piece has been transforming the way we build things. But yeah, that's interesting. So I want to get into a little bit about Magento. Now we've talked about Amasty and your role and the extensions. So Magento, the brand, the Magento, the platform, and maybe a little bit about how Adobe plays into this, Adobe Commerce plays into this. Why don't you give me your big picture view of how those things maybe benefit each other, Adobe's role. I know a lot of people know this, but it's always good to get a different, like particularly an insider's perspective on the different brands and how they play in the ecosystem.
Okay, where we start? The case is that major of Amasty clients are Magento open source clients. So I would say that 70% of them, roughly 70% of them are Magento open source clients. So for us, it's the main focus, regardless. But we understand that some businesses require something more reliable. When I'm saying more reliable, I mean that it's easier to sign the contract where you can see some signature from Adobe or Adobe guarantee.
Yeah.
And sometimes like the, let's say, one of the biggest corporates in the world selling it better than super flexible product. So we shouldn't admit that there is a specific layer of clients who are not able to sign any kind of, let's say, open source, not backed up with a huge giant software, right? And like Adobe has its own place, they have its own niche, and there are a lot of happy clients making sure that they're able to use not only commerce platform, but a huge amount of pretty powerful services that Adobe provides along with the platform. So even as we are serving like almost like 7 from 10 customers for Magento open source, we need to take it into account and make sure that our products are compatible, not just compatible, but they provide some kind of extra synergy for this group of customers as well. So that's why we establish different, let's say, value streams here. And when I'm saying value streams, it means that the process is a little bit different for, let's say, open source product and Adobe Commerce as a cloud product. because at every layer, there are some extra checks, like extra functionality could be added or could be reused. And in the core, it could be the same product, but it can interact differently with, for example, Adobe infrastructure. For Adobe Cloud products, we need to test it with Adobe Cloud infrastructure. We can reuse extra components from it, making sure it works normally with, for example, Adobe Sensei. It brings extra load to the team, but I believe it's fair to charge more such clients and make sure that Adobe, or like not Adobe clients, but Magento open source clients can benefit, let's say, lower fees. I don't like the approach like all size fits all. Why should we distribute the same product for all clients? Why, while they have a little bit different needs, and we should package it according to these needs. So like it's pretty self-sufficient here. So like we have less cloud clients, for example, but they're paying more, and we're still able to support all their requirements with this revenue stream.
So for those that don't know, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably know, but if you don't, the Magento open source e-commerce platform is the engine within Adobe Commerce. Adobe Commerce is a component of the entire Adobe ecosystem. So they have Adobe Experience Managers, kind of their flagship system. A lot of big corporations want that piece of software. It delivers a lot of value to them. If they want to add an e-commerce component, then they typically would plug in Adobe Commerce. The engine within that is the Magento open source engine. Typically, the clients that Adobe's going for through their sales initiatives are what we would call enterprise. So they're much larger businesses. If you're on the agency side, like I am, that engagement is a very different process. Like if you go for small businesses or mid-market businesses, the way that you engage with these clients is more direct. You maybe get direct contact with ownership, decision makers, where on the enterprise side, you might only be talking to people within a department within the enterprise. There's a lot more red tape, and there's a lot of more guarantees these companies need that when they partner with somebody on a platform that they're going to leverage to build business growth, they feel very secure about that contract, right? So in the perspective of an enterprise, signing a contract with Adobe gives them a relationship with Adobe, and they're not so dependent on an agency. They can put their stuff on an Adobe solution, and they can kind of swap out agencies later on if they want. I think that's one of the perceptions of the advantage of an enterprise going with Adobe, from my perspective.
Yeah,
right?
We need to also acknowledge here that Adobe has its own app marketplace, and there are a specific set of clients that are purchasing products only from marketplace.
Right.
They would like to make sure that every product is checked by Adobe and approved. So we even passed like Adobe assurance program and make sure that our navigation, is assured by Adobe, explicitly stating that it's tested with a large portfolio for large clients, and you can safely use it there.
Right.
So it's a complicated process, but for some clients, it's super important to have it in place.
Yep. It kind of gives them that extra level of guarantee, or not, that they're of stability, which in an enterprise is critical, where they'll pay extra money for some additional insurances, at least, in their minds. It's like,
Yeah, sometimes it's really so. So, for example, in our process, we're exclusively charging for it because, there are three different realities. Magento open source, it's a platform. It's always it's a ground that always included in any kind of extensions. It's Adobe, commerce on premises, as we call it. I'm not sure if they even sell it anymore.
Well, Well, we use it.
But yes, I know that there are a lot of active clients here, but I'm not sure if it's a public offering anymore for this kind of services.
Mm-hmm.
It's where you are getting more sophisticated solution with a lot of B2B functionality already added into it, and you're paying licenses fee for it. And when you're buying this solution plus infrastructure.
Right.
So there are 3 different distributions, and every time you need to check something different at the next layer.
So you have to check it against each.
Cloud Sandbox could be super different from like just your vanilla installation of Adobe Commerce on your own environment.
Right.
Because it could be different endpoints activated for it, for example. I'm not sure if it's even possible to use Adobe Sensei without Adobe infrastructure. Probably there are differences.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's one of the value adds for going to Adobe Commerce Cloud is that you get the Sensei. And
some people are enjoying infrastructure as well, like Fastly and so on. So it's another layer. Like you can use different services in your own premises, right? But if you're going with commerce, you need to make sure that it's compatible with. There are no, let's say, extra unexpected cases with your solution as well.
Yeah. So going back to the brand, so you're obviously doing a lot of work in Europe. I'm doing a lot of work in the United States. We might have a different, slightly different perception, or at least the two sides of the Atlantic might have a different perception about the Magento brand, which I find kind of interesting. But what would you say are the biggest challenges facing, the Magento brand in terms of maintaining that that sense of relevance, the sense that it's continuing to be part of the future of e-commerce, and that the relationship between Adobe Commerce and Magento, we continue to have some clarity within the marketplace about what that is. Like, do you see challenges in Magento as a brand with some of these, maybe frictions there?
Yeah, there definitely there are some challenges here. And some of them are related to this, let's say, rebranding activities that taken place like 4 or 5 years ago, when Magento was converted to Adobe Commerce.
Mm-hmm.
And several years after it was reverted back. But the case is, let's say, for people who are in context, it's easier to understand it that let's say, for the merchants that were not aware about all these actions. And I like different scientists, like people from the different industries that are making studies on specific subject. And there is brand expert named David A. Acker. He has a lot of nice studies on brands. And what he says that sometimes it's easier to launch new brand than to resurrect or awake existing one. Because if a client already heard something about Magento 5 years ago, then it was out of different radars for several years. And then people started saying something new about specific brand. He said, okay, I already learned about it. Why should I learn about the same brand once again?
Mm-hmm.
What you would I learn from this, let's say, exercise? And it's very native. For example, when people are saying German cars, you can just from top of your mind name several brands. But have you heard anything about Opel recently?
No, I know Opel, but right, I know. Yeah. I get your point. Yeah.
So this is the case. So even if they are doing something good at the moment, probably will not consider them as an leader or innovator of electric vehicles.
Yeah.
And there is some kind of, let's say, background that could be very problematic to, let's say, re-educate people on.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that this is some kind of heritage Magento has.
Yeah.
It has some background, and people at the moment, let's say, think that they're aware about it and they learned everything about it. That's why I believe that Hyvä is something that changes the game, because you can re-educate people not on Magento, but on Hyvä.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
think,
it's easier like that.
Yeah, because it's new. Yeah, it's a good point. I think one of the kind of brand mantras is the discipline around consistency. So you have a brand, you stay consistent on what the brand is, and you just hammer that on consistently forever. Somewhere 5 or 6 years ago, there was confusion around the Magento brand. And I don't think we've really recovered from that confusion, although I think there's a possibility to recover. But I also think it's going to morph into some different things. That's my personal perspective. That one thing I would say, and this is a little bit off topic, is that where I'm seeing traction with Magento is it being the underlying engine on a solution that's targeting an industry. And they're selling and marketing the solution as an industry-specific solution as opposed to a Magento solution. Then if you have to dig in and answer questions about Magento, you tell the whole story. Okay, Adobe is using it. There's tons of enterprises where this is the underlying engine. It's obviously got massive market penetration and stability and a proven track record. So this is not in any way a subpar, far from it, e-commerce solution. This is a very stable, enterprise-worthy solution. So, but you change the initial conversation based on, we have a solution for your industry. Let me tell you about our solution. That's one way of dealing with it. But I don't think giving up on the Magento brand is obviously the solution. I don't think I don't think the Magento Association, which we're going to get into next, is making that case, right? But
I believe it's a different story. Like, there are a lot of new businesses that are appearing, and they haven't learned about it. And it's one of the main points what I face in almost every day. In open source world, reaction, it's not immediate like in a, let's say, SaaS world. For example, if you are launching SaaS application, you are getting feedback the same moment your customer using your product. It like clicks any button on your product and you get analytics on it. But on Magento world, it takes months to make sure your new version of the product is adopted. They even can recognize that there are some changes made. And normally it takes, let's say, it makes some latency. It's like, for example, you're taking shower in a swimming pool and there are 4 showers in a row in parallel. And if everybody is starting like calibrating the water, hot, cold, and so on, and they are doing it in a chaotic way, they can indefinitely try to make it comfortable for every of them. But if you understand that there is some, let's say, latency in response, and make sure that like not all these showers are activated at the same moment, and you're trying to calibrate every of them in the same moment, it's getting easier. And you can stabilize it faster. The case is with Magento as well. Like, there is a lot of people that know about Magento, but they associate it with Magento 1 version. And they still do not understand why Magento 2 is so technically different. There are people that haven't used it at all, but have heard a lot of stories about it. There are people who even haven't heard about it and they would like to learn something new about it. They're trying to Google it, and you can imagine what they can find. So I believe we shouldn't make sure that there is just one segment of the clients who know every piece of the story about Magento. We should bring our narrative as well for the people who haven't heard about it and are eager to learn something new about it, what they're going to do, where they need to find this information. And that's why it's so important, let's say, to build this narrative, to create this base. Let's say we have a Magento open source website, for example, but we're still in the progress building their proper case studies.
Right.
We have like the social media presence, but it's more about Magento Association, but not about Magento open source. We're just doing our first baby steps in making sure that Magento open source has the proper media presence in the current environment. And we're trying to compete with other platforms that already like more advanced to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And they have a larger bank account. Let's just say it.
Definitely. They have like more than like one person responsible for it.
So on that note, Sergej, it's a good time for a break. We'll wrap it up here, and we look forward to talking to you in the next episode.